from the CSICOP stable, the pseudoskeptics' striking, career dishonesty hallmark occurs in Michael Shermer. Being talentless, ability-free, and having no interest whatsoever in the subjects and scientists he criticizes, in media appearances, he can only make up lies, and offer irrelevant opinions, because he willfully knows nothing. And that's essentially all he does for his entire career. Amazingly, Scientific American publish his unqualified opinions. But real qualified practicing peer-reviewed scientists, here below, patiently point out that Shermer never knows what he is talking about, and his pseudo-scientific criticisms are totally disconnected from reality, amounting to only mindless random abuse. He admits repeatedly to not reading the science books he criticizes. Yet he is frequently presented, in the media, as necessary toothless attack dog to keep science rational, quite the opposite of what he is. But Shermer is another embodiment of the preposterous proposition that the science peer review process is inadequate and requires an additional process of mindless abuse from unqualified street people like him, at CSICOP, because we live in a dangerously free society requiring his personal intervention to keep society rational. What delusion! Michael Shermer is publisher of the Skeptic magazine, the director of the Skeptic Society, the host of the Skeptics lecture series at the California Institute of Technology, and the author of a regular column in Scientific American called Skeptic. He frequently appears in the U.S. media as an advocate of the skeptical point of view. Although he is a historian rather than a scientist, he sees himself as an arbiter of scientific credibility and standard-bearer of rational thought. In a free society, skeptics are the watchdogs against irrationalism. Debunking is not simply a divestment of bunk, its utility is in offering a better alternative, along with a lesson in how thinking goes wrong. Scientific American, June 2001, page 23. According to Wikipedia, wikipedia.org, he was once a fundamentalist Christian. Much of his writing concerns the personal experiences that shaped his worldview. He once tried to enhance his athletic abilities with various New Age techniques, such as iridology, rolfing, and megavitamins. He even kept a pyramid in his living room to increase energy. His skepticism developed in reaction to his earlier credulity. He now reveals a similarly credulous attitude toward mainstream science itself. If it's big science, he is all for it, including human cloning. In his book The Borderlands of Science, he outlines a series of criteria for distinguishing between real science and baloney. He particularly warns his readers against people who have ideologies to pursue, whose pattern of thinking consistently ignores or distorts data not for creative purposes, but for ideological agendas. Unfortunately, he himself has an ideology to pursue, and makes untruthful and pseudo-scientific claims. In fact, that's his chosen career, personally practicing the very thing that he preaches against, like all of the CSICOP pseudo-skeptics. For example, in his skeptic column in Scientific American in March 2003, he cited a research study published in The Lancet, a leading medical journal, by Pim van Lommel and colleagues. He asserted this study delivered a blow to the idea that the mind and the brain could separate. Yet the researchers argued the exact opposite, and showed that conscious experience outside the body took place during a period of clinical death, when the brain was flat-lined. As Jay Ingram, of the Canadian Discovery Channel, commented, his use of this study, to bolster his point, is bogus. He could have said, the authors think there's a mystery, but I choose to interpret their findings differently. But he didn't. I find that very disappointing. Plain dishonesty. Toronto Star, March 16, 2003. Responder just too kind and polite. Pim van Lommel wrote to the editor of Scientific American, setting out the evidence that Shermer misrepresented. Now, why does Scientific American employ a regular, flying columnist like Shermer, attacking its serious science contributors? Wake up, dear reader, it's been hijacked. In August 2004, Dr. Petrus Benjamin wrote to point out an extremely unscientific statement. In an article by Shermer on telepathy, the good doctor just can't say. Idiotic statement, he is just too polite. In November 2004, Professor John Poynton, president of the Society for Psychical Research, wrote to protest that Shermer's activities are a distortion of the concept of skepticism. In relation to Rupert Sheldrake's book The Sense of Being Stared At, he claimed in USA Today that the events Sheldrake describes don't require a theory, and are perfectly explicable by normal means. February 26, 2003. When asked to substantiate this claim, he was unable to do so, and admitted he had not seen the book. Just making things up, mindless antagonism, a watchdog on a chain, barking for nothing, Shermer's own dog metaphor. In his August 2004 skeptic column in Scientific American, Shermer launched an extraordinary attack on the widely respected physicist Freeman Dyson of Princeton. He took exception to the fact that Freeman Dyson publicly concluded that paranormal phenomena might really exist, on the basis of a great mass of evidence. New York Review of Books, March 25, 2004. Dyson's error, according to Shermer, was to be interested in people's actual experiences. Even genius of this magnitude cannot override the cognitive biases that favor anecdotal thinking. The only way to find out if anecdotes resemble real phenomena is controlled tests. Either people can read other people's minds, or ESP cards, or they can't. Science has unequivocally demonstrated that they can't. QED. No genius too great to lie about. This sounds like a crushing rebuttal of Dyson's view, with the full weight of the authority of science, written in the leading science magazine. But it is untrue. There have been many scientific investigations of telepathy, and there is much evidence in its favor. Shermer is a close associate of the conjurer James Randi. In January 2005, in Las Vegas, at the Stardust Hotel, they gave a workshop together on how to get the skeptical message across, teaching would-be media skeptics the tricks of the trade, so that they could be the one the media will call when the next UFO or psychic healer appears on the scene. In Randy's amazing meeting in Las Vegas, in 2005, delegates at the media workshop given by Randy and Michael Shermer were handed a manual called Communicating Skepticism to the Public, which told them how to become a media skeptic. Becoming an expert is a pretty simple procedure. Tell people you are an expert. After you do that, all you have to do is maintain appearances, and not give them a reason to believe you are not. For the Coast to Coast debate, January 23, 2006, Shermer, in the Skeptic's Cage. Review of the debate. The Coast to Coast show, hosted by George Noory, held its first Skeptic's Cage debate between skeptic Dr. Michael Shermer and three scientists engaged in psi research. The debate began with hour 2 of Coast to Coast. The first researcher introduced was Dr. Gary Schwartz, of the University of Arizona. Schwartz received an impressive introduction which mentioned his 400 published research papers, and 11 books edited. Schwartz began his long career with conventional research into psychiatry and psychology, but almost 10 years ago, began to conduct research into professional mediumship, and whether mediums are able to contact the dead. Here is Schwartz introducing this research. I began this work, certainly, as a questioner. I had been raised to believe ashes to ashes, dust to dust, case closed. As a scientist, my job is to explore phenomena, and design experiments, as carefully as possible, and then let the data speak. Over the past now almost 10 years, the research has just continued to reveal positive findings, under ever more stringent conditions, that could not be explained by the conventional way of approaching this, including what is called cold reading, or warm reading, or hot reading, or rater bias, or experimenter error, or any of the things that any good scientist would want to remove. Shermer replied that the evidence for mediumship is pretty slim and fraught with experimental design problems. The lack of any kind of viable theory that would explain how our neural memories are downloaded into some other platform that lasts longer than the protein meat that we are made out of, our DNA patterns, our memories, how do they get passed on? There is no good theory for how it would work, even if the data were there to support it, which in my opinion it isn't. Schwartz retorted that Shermer hadn't even read the research that he was criticizing. First of all, it would be nice if Michael was actually up to date with regard to the research. In this kind of research, we handle that concern of yours very explicitly, meaning, who does the rating? The way this is done, which is absolutely definitive, is that the sitter is not present at the time the reading is done. At a later point in time, the sitter is given two readings. One is their reading, and the other is a control reading, meaning it is a reading of somebody else. And they have to rate each item, and they're doing it blindly, because they don't know which is theirs and which is the control reading, and, under those circumstances, whatever bias a given rater might have, they're going to apply it equally to their reading and the control reading. And if under those circumstances the degree of accuracy is scored significantly higher when it's for their reading and when it's the control reading, it eliminates all of the concerns of the subjectivity, which has been, of course, a legitimate question to ask. And this kind of research, by the way, has not only been done in our laboratory, it's also been done independently in Scotland, with very similar results. So when you look at the actual experiments that have been done, it addresses Michael's concern, and quite effectively. But Shermer hasn't read it, and has no intention of. Then we asked Schwartz how he could ever convince Michael Shermer of the validity of his research. Schwartz responds vigorously. Well, in order to convince someone like Michael, he'd have to first of all actually read the experiments, and when he would make a comment, like he just did, he would base it actually on knowledge, as opposed to merely irrelevant off-subject opinion. If he was basing it on actually knowing the experiments and experimental designs, he wouldn't make the statements that he makes. Shermer was forced to admit he was not up to date with Schwartz's latest research. The bottom line of the debate: somebody should locate bin Laden using remote viewing, or at least find Jimmy Hoffa's unmarked grave. Then parapsychologists can count on convincing Michael Shermer, the self-elected nobody, of the reality of psi phenomena. In that case, perhaps the next skeptic debate will even feature a skeptic who actually bothers to read the research they are attacking. Shermer's usual dishonest behavior in the debate with three scientists with impressive experimental data was continually arguing off-point, bin Laden, Jimmy Hoffa, Mickey Mouse, etc. And this is mirrored daily in thousands of online pseudo-skeptic encounters on YouTube, equally mindless. That there is an organized entire stable at CSICOP of these unqualified Michael Shermer-type nobodies who make content-free media careers of mindless hectoring of reputable science points to some agency's firm desire to discredit certain non-materialist scientific advances, maintaining some very lucrative scientific myths, such as Big Pharma medicines like antidepressants that don't work but earn billions, as well as the broken U.S. health system, the most expensive profit-making in the world, where oddly, medical insurance status is controlled by one's employer and length of service there. A throwback to slavery that everyone is born into in the U.S. Keeping the system this broken, maintaining the status quo, is the mission of the CSICOP pseudo-skeptics like Michael Shermer. Quotes from skepticalinvestigations.org.